Hello and welcome back to the Billy Goat channel. I'm Billy, and in today's vlog I'm going to be showing you the art that I've been working on since the beginning of the year. I've been preparing for an update to my Etsy shop. I'm going to have a lot of new prints and new originals up for sale, and there's going to be an announcement video for that in the coming weeks. But before we get into the video, can you see this Billy Goat shirt? It's like I have my own merch, but actually, I should preface this by saying I'm kind of skeptical of thrift stores in general. Like, most of the time when I go into a thrift store, I don't really see anything that I would want to get. You know, it's all kind of, I'm like, wow, this is a bunch of garbage stuff. But then my wife, she always surprises me with these finds. And this shirt is something she found today. She wanted to stop at a thrift store this morning, and I was just like, okay, I'll just be in the car, you know, on my phone. You can go in there. So she was only gone for like 10 minutes, and then she comes back with this Billy Goat shirt. And so that's amazing. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the video, and I'll show you what I've been working on lately. Before we get into the artwork, I want to show you some footage of a place me and my wife went to. This was back in January, and it's called Lake Louisa State Park. And the way I discovered this place is basically when I'm on night shifts at work. When I have a day off, I tend to get bored at the house because, you know, everyone's sleeping. There's only so many things I can do. You know, nowhere's open to go or anything like that. So I end up just taking drives on these desolate roads out in the countryside. So one night I was driving around the city of Claremont, which is about an hour away from where I live, and I discovered this park. So I told my wife about it, and we decided to go check it out. And it was pretty cool. We hiked on this trail, we went on the boardwalk that went through the swamp, and we actually saw Lake Louisa itself, although I didn't get any footage of the actual lake. And it was just really nice being out in nature, until this happened.
Is this actually a passage? Ah! Okay, we might just be going into the jungle now.
Other than that little incident, it was a lot of fun, and I definitely want to go again and check it out sometime and hike some more of the trails. Anyway, on to the art. So my first step in preparing for the shop update was to finish a sketchbook drawing that I had started all the way back in May of last year, and it's called Rebirth. If you watched my first vlog, you may have seen this page briefly. It shouldn't have taken me this long to finish it, but somewhere along the way I decided that it would look really good as a print, and ever since then I've been procrastinating on it because I was worried I'd ruin it or something, you know. But I decided now's the time, we gotta get this one done. And luckily the drawing was already about 75% done, so all I had to do was fill in the details in the bottom right section. So I made a mistake early on and put gesso on top of the brush pen, and that kind of created a shadowy, smudgy area right in the middle of the city. But I think it actually works with the drawing because there would be kind of a shadowy, dark area in the depths of the infrastructure, you know, so to speak. So I kind of just worked around that. This whole process of inking, it really requires just patience more than anything else, and like trying to think in terms of shapes. And I'm not really great at like architecture and stuff, you know, it's not something I draw a whole lot. But I think in this context where you're trying to give like a sense of scale, it really helps to just use simple shapes and try to express these massive structures that way rather than, you know, going crazy with details. So I finished this one right at the end of January, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's stylistically distinct from the other art I've been making. It's kind of got a moody, mysterious thing going on. It's like, what is this huge city just doing here in the middle of this wasteland? So yeah, I think it turned out pretty well. February came along, and the plan was to work on 2 other unfinished sketchbook pages that I had that I wanted to turn into new prints. Unfortunately, I was feeling kind of uninspired at that point, and I felt like I needed something big to reboot my creative flow, to get those juices going. So I decided to work on a concept that had been bouncing around in my head for a while. It was based off of a sketch from my first sketchbook called Amoeba. When I first did this drawing, my wife said that I should color it in, but I never did, so it seemed like this was the perfect opportunity to make a large-scale version and, do it a full color painting. And the overall goal for the painting was to have a limited but bright color palette, and also I wanted to use heavy matte gel and gloss medium to add some interesting textural details. So I started with a 24 by 30 inch canvas. As I was opening it up, I realized that there was this random hole in the canvas, so I had to put a little tape on the back of that. I've just been kind of storing my canvases like in between the couch and my art supplies, and they just kind of get beat up there. So after I got that hole patched up, I taped the edges, which is always kind of a tedious endeavor. Then I decided to lay out this background using a mix of turquoise, heavy body acrylic, and gesso, just kind of going for a loosely mixed kind of look. And here's what that looks like from above. Next, I started the body of the cell. This part was pretty straightforward. It was basically the same as the earlier sketch. For some reason, when I was doing this particular section, instead of just letting the layer dry, I kept putting more paint on and wiping it away and putting more paint on. And then finally, it got to the point where I just wiped it all off with a paper towel, and that just became what I stuck with. To me, it has kind of a translucent effect. It looks like the cell's like a little broken down in this part, so I decided I liked it. Then came the little tentacles, which are actually called cilia. According to Google, amoebas don't actually have cilia, and that's why this piece is actually called paramecium, because they do have the cilia to move around. And this part of the process, not much to say about it. I would just listen to my music and chill out, basically. After this, I took a little break from painting because I was starting to get kind of frustrated with the layout of my art area. For one thing, I realized that my work would have better lighting if I could get the table all the way against the wall. So I ended up moving my plastic drawers to the other side to make room, and that also gave me the opportunity to clean out all the dust bunnies that had built up in the nooks and crannies. So once I was satisfied with the new arrangement, I got back to work mixing a big old glob of heavy matte gel with some golden So Flat acrylic. As soon as I put that first chunk down with the palette knife, I could instantly tell that it was too dark, so I scraped it away and I remixed the color. I added in some cadmium yellow and some gesso to lighten things up, and that got the green to the brightness that I had initially wanted. So basically, I'm just using the palette knife to put the gel in a few different spots. Next, I used magenta to mix 2 colors that I would use for the lining of the cilia and the cell wall itself. I also did this satisfying paint pour for the micronucleus, which is another part of the cell. Now that I had the big plant chunk positioned and fully dried, I could go in and paint the cilia that were pulling it in. These were the last cilia that I painted because I kind of had to work around the shape of whatever that piece of plant would look like. A few of them turned out a little crooked, but otherwise, I think they turned out fine. After that, I did some more color mixing, this time a darker green that I was going to do some details with. So I just put little lines and dots on a lot of the plant chunks. At this point, I started to feel like the painting was a little unbalanced, like the bottom half needed something extra to add visual interest. So I started to fill out the translucent areas with these dots and bubbles and just tried to add a little more detail to that area without overdoing it. And next I mixed up this glossy neon orange to add some details to the other part of the nucleus, which is called the macronucleus. And I did some outlines for these vacuoles. Finally, I very painstakingly painted the edges with a bright yellow, and that part almost made me lose it a couple times because I kept painting over the edge. But with that, the painting was complete. I really like how this one turned out. It's bold. I love the contrast between the matte background colors and the glossy line work. In general, I tried to focus on shapes and colors, and I think that just made the process really enjoyable to do. So I'm definitely going to keep experimenting with this style in future projects. It was early March by the time Paramecium was finished, and I decided that rather than returning to the sketchbook pages that I was going to turn into prints, I was just going to finish up another old painting that I'd had lying around. But first, I'd have to do an important step in the artist process. So after everything was nice and clean, I started on this painting. This was one that I started back in June of last year. I basically did half of it and then didn't touch it again after that. It was covered in these random splotches that I'm assuming was because I started working on other art when I had it on my desk. So I was like flicking black paint at it at some point. So that was kind of annoying. That was something I wanted to fix. And I wanted to paint the background the same color as the foreground, which was like a orangish brown color. But when I started on this background, it was way too red. So I added some blue to it, and then I got this like forest green color. So at that point I was just like, okay, I guess I'm not painting the dirt, I'm just gonna paint some grass. So already I was like deviating from my original plan, and I've just realized that a lot of the time it's better to just follow the new path rather than try to make your original idea work. So the background just kind of became darker as I layered on the green. I was trying to get all the textures right at these different distances. You know, up close you're going to see more of the individual grass, and then in the distance it's going to be kind of broader strokes and stuff like that. There were some points where I had to wipe some of the paint away because I started to encroach on the sunrise area a little bit too much and it was getting too dark. So next I started the sky, and this was supposed to be like a pastel lavender type color, and once again I mixed the color too dark. I cut away these clouds and I basically just let the underlayer shine through in those areas. Then I tried to make some God rays shining out from the sun, but I wasn't really happy with that. Didn't have that brightness I was looking for, and I'd end up correcting that in a little bit here. So then I moved on to the mountain on the right side, which gave me like the most trouble out of anything. So I started just slathering on some barely mixed up blue and red, and that was an instant disaster. It was way too saturated. It was sticking out like a sore thumb. Thus began the cycle of me wiping the dark color away and then adding some more and then wiping it away. Eventually I realized that the constant wiping was actually creating the soft texture that I needed in this area, so I just left it alone at that point and started to add small little details just to suggest these distant rock outcroppings. Finally, I mixed some more pink paint and added a fresh layer to the sunrise, trying to expand that glow and accentuate the God rays I'd done earlier. Then I added in a few more patches of grass to the mountain on the side, and that was it. Honestly, I gotta say, I think this is one of my best paintings, maybe my favorite one so far, I don't know. I just really love how it turned out. It has kind of a radiance to it. I decided to varnish it using spray satin varnish, which was a first for me. I've used the liquid varnish that you brush on before, and overall this went okay. I did it right in my driveway. The only problem was when I sprayed the coats on, I saw that the varnish was pooling up in a couple of spots, that it was just gonna dry up in these patches, so I like freaked out a little bit. I had to run inside and get a brush and then come back out and even everything out with the brush. So it was kind of strange that I got the spray varnish and just ended up brushing it anyway, but yeah, I think the varnish turned out great. It has a really just smooth surface to it. But yeah, overall, super happy with this one, and I think it makes a great addition to my recent work. And that's the end of this vlog video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks everybody who's been watching my videos. If you like this kind of art content, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next video.